Hey, hello everybody. Welcome, Red Dragons. Want to chat with you about what's happening regarding our COVID protocols. So we have opportunity. After 11 months of not being in the pool together, and some of us at all, we're finally back and we can pursue our passion. And I can tell you from talking to other SUNYAC coaches, we're the first swim team in the conference to be back in. And looking around campus, I think we're the first team that is practicing regularly, people who are able to and want to being able to hop in. So this is great. You know, we're one of the first. We had a great first week. I'm very pleased with what I saw last week. I know some of us are struggling a little bit more than others, and that's okay right now. But just keep doing the little things every day, and we'll get there. One of the little things, actually the biggest thing, is that we have to be perfect about our COVID protocols. And I'm going to keep reminding everybody about that, because our opportunity here is 100% dependent upon what we do. So that's the one thing. We got to be perfect, and this is the area that we have to be perfect in. So reminder, our pods, our training groups are made up of team members based upon schedule and also living arrangements wherever I could. And if somebody has COVID, that's going to keep it smaller in terms of the exposure to others and reduce the risk of actual transmission. Remember spatial awareness, talk about putting your arms out, spin around. You should be able to do that and not hit anybody. Spatial awareness, maintain that at least 6 feet of distance from people around you. Lane assignments. Make sure we're going to try to be very consistent with our lane assignments. It'll change a little bit, but what we found last week is that if one person tests positive, they're probably going to quarantine the adjacent lanes. If we're splitting a lane, opposite ends or 5 yards back, and adjacent lanes, it looks like will potentially be quarantined. So we're going to try to be consistent so that we're limiting exposure, because if somebody's next to one person on a Tuesday, somebody else on a Wednesday, that might be 2 other people who can get quarantined. But the good news right now, it's not a whole training pod. It's just going to be the people in the lanes adjacent. Fingers crossed. Out of the pool procedures, your social circles. We talked about this early on. Keep your social circles fairly small. Again, the first 2 weeks, we're 1 week through. When we get through our second week with the weekly testing, maybe things will be good, but let's make sure we're keeping our social circles small. Your housemates, your roommates, your training pods, and be very diligent about who it is outside of that you are in contact with. Avoid large gatherings. Make sure you're doing that daily COVID reporting. I did mine, the phone, the app, and you get that green screen. And be accurate. Please, if you have any signs or symptoms, indicate it. Doesn't matter if it's a cough, the sniffles, some body aches, runny nose. These are all signs and symptoms. Make sure you hit that. And on top of that, if you have any signs or symptoms, don't come to practice. Send me a text message. Coach, I'm not feeling well. Okay. Stay back, because that's going to be the safest thing. And if you miss one day, better for you to miss one day more than maybe you should have than potentially 6 or 7 people, even if it's just 2 or 3 missing a week or 2, 10 days because of quarantine. So be safe and keep those safe around you. If there is a positive COVID test, so if you test positive, you're going to get a call from contact tracing. And it's important to be clear about what your potential exposures are. So I believe when we had somebody exposed, they were asked, well, who are you in the pool with? Which is pretty broad. I mean, there's a lot of kids that are in the pool. Swimmers at one end, divers at the other. Lane 1 is in the pool with you, even if you're in lane 6. So make sure that you say, okay, well, I swam, here's where I was, and here's who was next to me. And if you're not sure, if you don't remember, I'm writing this down every day. So I just have to find out who it was, what day, and I can go back and check the log. And that's what happened this past week, and we're able to make sure that we're keeping our exposure to a minimum and that we're accurate about knowing who was potentially exposed. But make sure that you answer the questions accurately, truthfully, and when they say the question might be who was in the pool, hey, here's who I was about 6 feet from. Point of information, the lanes are 7 feet apart. From anchor point to anchor point for the lane lines, that's 7 feet. But who is in the adjacent lanes might be what is important. I cannot, due to HIPAA violations, HIPAA protects people's personal health information. I cannot share if somebody is tested positive. So here's what you need to do. If you test positive and you are comfortable doing it, the quicker you tell people, your training group, your housemates, others, people on your floor, then the easier it's going to be for them to potentially protect themselves and others. Sometimes contact tracing takes a couple days and a lot of exposures could happen. So my advice, I put it on blast when I tested positive. I said, hey, I tested positive. I want people to know. I didn't have exposure to anybody else, but I wanted people to know. So normalizing, hey, when it happens, this is what people can do. That'll kickstart people being safe around others. If somebody else tests positive, let's be empathetic, all right? Because anybody who has had it or who has had to quarantine, it's not a fun time. So what we need to do is to be empathetic. And if we are following the protocols, if somebody catches it, don't blame them, don't shame them. It's not their fault. This can happen to anybody. It is happening to just about everybody. So support your teammate and make sure if they are quarantining or isolating that you're giving them a little bit of love. Let them know that you're thinking of them, you're worried about them, and that you're there for them. And maybe it's just, hey, can I pick you up something from the store, from the snack bar? But be a good teammate and stay connected with all of your teammates. Of course, this is assuming that people behave themselves and they're not getting it because they were doing stuff that they shouldn't have been. So our habits from past years have to change in order for us to be able to practice and safely eventually compete. So what we have to do, we got to make sure that we're adhering to this. So every day in practice, I'm reminding you, don't do this, don't do that, maintain your space. But I think by the end of this week, we're going to have it. And next week, it's going to be automatic. And some of these changes will be a little bit easier. It's going to be more natural. And we get to keep doing our passion. Finally, we're about 12 weeks away from April 30th, 31st. We can swim all the way through the first week in May. That first week in May, I'm just going to give people flexibility and have it be a stress reliever because I know the end of the semester sometimes gets to be a lot for people. But I'd like to target April 30th and 31st, that Friday, Saturday, as an opportunity for us to compete. And if it's time trials, we'll figure out how we're going to race, let you choose events. Divers, figure out what you want to throw for dives. If we have the opportunity, I'd like to compete virtually against another school, but we'll wait and see if we get that kind of permission. But in the meantime, I wanted to give all you racers and all you competitors the opportunity to think about what events you want to focus on for the end of the year. So 12 weeks from now, we've got 12 weeks. We've got 1 week down, so 13 weeks. It's like a high school season. It's short. It's going to force me to coach a little differently, but we can do this, and we can have some great potential performances end of April if we focus. And in the meantime, between now and then, Saturdays, still going to be race days. Have a great week, everybody. Go Red Dragons.